Kids were running around, their laughter drifting across the neighborhood as they played tag. People were casually walking between the yards, browsing through tables scattered with old furniture, books, clothes, typical yard sale fare. The air was filled with the smell of freshly cut grass and the soft hum of a world that felt far too normal, too safe. I didn't expect much when I left the apartment that day. I needed a few things. Some used textbooks, a set of mugs that didn't cost me an arm and a leg, maybe a jacket if I got lucky. As a college student, money was tight, and I'd learned over the years that thrift stores and yard sales were my best friends. They didn't judge my budget. That's how I ended up at Linda's yard sale. It was a small gathering in front of an older house, one that looked like it had seen better days. I'm sure Linda was nice enough. She greeted me with a tired smile as I glanced over her items, nothing really out of the ordinary. But then I saw it. There, tucked near a pile of faded books and porcelain figurines, sat an old leather backpack. It was worn, the kind of thing that looked like it had lived 1,000 lives. And yet, there was something about it that drew me in. It was vintage, a little scratched, but it looked sturdy, something that could last for years if given the right care. I picked it up and inspected it, running my fingers over the soft leather. The price tag caught my eye. Surprisingly cheap. It felt almost wrong to pay so little for something that seemed so significant. But then again, I wasn't exactly swimming in cash, and I didn't have time to question things. I made the purchase, thanked Linda, and tucked the backpack under my arm. She didn't say much, just smiled, a little. But there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was just exhaustion, or maybe I was imagining things. Later that night, I was at home, sitting cross-legged on the couch, the backpack resting in front of me. Maria, my older sister, was away on a business trip, leaving me to enjoy the quiet apartment. I decided to clean out the bag to see if there was anything interesting inside. As I opened the main compartment, I noticed something strange, something small, wedged deep into the inner lining. It was a note, tightly folded, the edges crisp and fragile. I unfolded it, my fingers hesitating just a little as I read the words, "I'm watching you." At first I laughed, nervously of course. It had to be some kind of joke, a prank probably left over from the previous owner, maybe even Linda. The thought of it made me smile. The backpack had clearly been well used. Maybe she had a thing for quirky notes, or maybe it was some odd sense of humor. I shrugged it off, stuffed the note into the trash, and didn't think much of it. That was until 2 nights later. I was sitting on the couch again, mindlessly flipping through TV channels, when it happened. Each knock felt like a hammer striking the quiet of the night. I froze. My heart raced as I stood up and tiptoed to the peephole. Nothing. I waited, my breath shallow in my chest. Then came the voice. Low. Chilling. "Come out. I know you're in there. I won't leave without you." My skin crawled. My throat went dry. I didn't even have time to think. I just reacted, dialing 911 with trembling hands. The voice stopped. Dead silence followed. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I crouched down behind the couch, my phone still in my hand. I stayed still, afraid to breathe, waiting for any sound. I didn't dare peek through the window. It felt like I had entered another world, one where the boundaries of reality didn't make sense anymore. By the time the police arrived, there was nothing. The street was empty. The officers did a quick search around the building and asked me a few questions. They treated it like a possible prank, something harmless, probably just someone messing with me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. And that's when the watching began. Over the next few days, it was hard to shake the feeling of being followed. At first, I thought I was imagining things. A tall figure in a gray hoodie, always at a distance, never close enough for me to get a clear look. But it wasn't just one place. I'd spot him at the grocery store, walking behind me as I grabbed a cart. He'd be there across the street when I walked to class. At the cafe, seated in the corner, his eyes never leaving me. I started to wonder, was he following me all along? The man from the yard sale? Had he been there, standing off to the side, watching everyone, buying nothing? I couldn't remember his face clearly, but something about the way he stared made my stomach turn. It wasn't long before I decided to go back to the yard sale. I had to know if I had missed something. I needed answers. I knocked on Linda's door. When she opened it, I noticed how tired she looked, her eyes heavy as if she hadn't slept in days. I told her everything. The note, the voice, the figure. She listened in silence. Then her face shifted. She looked uneasy, her lips pressed into a tight line. "There was a man at the sale," she said slowly. He kept to himself, stood near the backpack table. Didn't say a word, just watched. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now that you're telling me all this, I can't shake the feeling that something was off about him. I asked her about his face, about anything she remembered, but she couldn't recall much more. She just apologized, her voice quiet, regretful. "I didn't think much of it at the time," she repeated. "But now, I wish I had." I left her house feeling no better. In fact, I felt worse. It was as if everything, every choice I'd made, had led me to this moment. The backpack, the note, the man. I wondered if it had all been a trap, some strange, invisible force that had latched onto me, waiting for the right moment to show itself. And so, I decided to leave. I booked a ticket home to stay with my parents for a while. It was the only way I could think to escape the creeping dread. I didn't want to leave, but I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. Every sound, every knock, even the creak of a floorboard made my heart race. I packed my things, careful not to take the backpack with me. I shoved it in a box and buried it deep in my closet, thinking that maybe, if I just left it behind, I could leave the fear with it. But when I got to my parents' house, nothing changed. The house was quiet, peaceful, like it always had been. My childhood room should have felt like safety, but it didn't. Every unfamiliar face made my heart pound. Every shadow seemed a little too long. Every rustle of the leaves outside my window felt like someone was just beyond the glass. The man never appeared again. No new notes, no knocks. But I kept asking myself over and over, was he always watching me? Was the backpack just the thing that drew his attention? Had I unknowingly invited something dark into my life? Something that would never leave? It's been weeks now. I've moved back into the apartment, trying to get back to normal. But something's changed. I check the locks twice before I go to bed. I avoid walking home alone. And sometimes, when I'm out, I feel it. The sensation of eyes on me, watching from across the street, from behind a parked car. Maybe it was all a sick joke. Maybe it was all just a coincidence. Or maybe he's still out there, waiting. It was a typical Saturday afternoon. The sun hung low in the sky, casting its final golden rays over the neighborhood I had recently moved to. The air was crisp, with a light breeze that sent dry leaves fluttering across the sidewalk. I had grown fond of the quiet, peaceful surroundings. As a young graphic designer, I spent most of my days sitting in front of a screen, designing logos and layouts for clients. But today, I decided to explore the neighborhood a bit, take in the local scenery, and maybe find something interesting at one of the yard sales. My name is Alex Richards, 26 years old. I just relocated to this quiet town to escape the fast-paced life of the city. I'm introverted, independent, and love the occasional trip to a local thrift shop or flea market. This was the first time I had visited a yard sale in my new neighborhood. I was leisurely strolling down the street when a sign caught my eye. Yard sale. Everything must go. I walked toward the house, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes, curious about what they were selling. As I browsed, I found typical items: old kitchen appliances, worn-out books, mismatched furniture, and odd trinkets. But one item stood out to me: a weathered black leather jacket that seemed oddly appealing. It was slightly worn but had this vintage charm that caught my attention. The jacket was a perfect fit, and the price was too good to pass up. I didn't think much about it at the time, only that it would make for a great addition to my wardrobe. The seller, a woman in her late 40s, smiled politely and handed me the jacket with a soft "thank you" as I paid her. I didn't realize at the time how much that jacket would come to mean, or how much it would change the course of my life. Over the next few days, I began to notice something strange. It started innocently enough. I first saw the man at the local library. He was standing near the entrance, his hood pulled low over his face, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. I didn't think much of it at the time, just another passerby. But then I saw him again. At the cafe near my apartment, he sat alone at a corner table, always staring at me with a cold, unblinking gaze. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just a coincidence. But the more I saw him, the more it felt deliberate. Each time he kept his distance. But there was something unsettling about the way he watched me. Something that made my skin crawl. After a few more encounters, I began to realize he was following me. It wasn't just a coincidence anymore. He was always there, lurking at the edges of my peripheral vision. The eerie part? He never approached me directly, never spoke. He just observed, his eyes never leaving me. One night, while waiting at the bus stop, I saw him again. He was standing in the shadows across the street, his face barely visible under his hood. I quickened my pace, heading back to my apartment, trying to push the fear gnawing at the back of my mind to the back of my thoughts. But something about his presence felt purposeful. A week later, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I had to go back to the yard sale location. I needed answers. What was the connection between this man and the jacket I'd bought? When I returned to the street, I immediately noticed that the house was now empty. No sign of the sale, no people milling around. It was as though they had disappeared overnight. The front yard, once filled with discarded items and clutter, was now bare. Only a "for sale" sign stood at the edge of the lawn, swaying slightly in the wind. I walked around the house, trying to peer inside, but the windows were shut tight, and there was no sign of life. The strange man I'd been seeing was nowhere to be found. A chill settled in my stomach. I had no idea what to think. Had they left suddenly? Was the house abandoned? And more importantly, what did this have to do with the jacket? I couldn't answer any of those questions. All I knew was that the unsettling feeling in the pit of my stomach wasn't going away. Something wasn't right, and I felt like I was in the middle of it. That night, after returning to my apartment, I decided to take a closer look at the jacket. Maybe it was just my nerves playing tricks on me, but something compelled me to inspect it thoroughly. As I ran my fingers along the lining, I felt a small, hidden pocket that I had missed before. Curiosity piqued, I unzipped it and found a small, folded piece of paper tucked inside. I unfolded it carefully, reading the message scrawled across the surface in a hasty hand. 46B, don't forget. He'll find it. My heart skipped a beat. The cryptic note made no sense. 46B? What did that mean? My mind raced as I tried to connect the dots. I'd seen something like this before. The address it referenced, 46B, was a building on the outskirts of the city. It was a location I had passed many times but never thought much about. But there was something strange about that building. Rumors had circulated about it for years. Whispers of a long-forgotten crime that took place there. A young woman had gone missing, and no one had ever been able to uncover what happened. Was this building the key to it all? The note felt like a clue to something dark, something I wasn't prepared to uncover. That night, my paranoia reached new heights. I barely slept, constantly glancing over my shoulder. The cryptic message had left me rattled, but what happened next made everything feel more real. Around 2 a.m., there was a knock at my door. I froze, staring at the door as my heart raced. No one should have been knocking at this hour. I hesitated before cautiously walking to the door. Through the peephole, I saw nothing but shadows. Then, just as I was about to turn away, I noticed a small piece of paper slipping under the door. My hands trembled as I picked it up and unfolded it. "Give it back. You don't know what you're wearing." A cold sweat broke out on my skin. I locked all my windows and doors, but the fear gripped me tighter than ever. What was happening? Who was doing this to me? And why had the man in the hood been following me all this time? Unable to take it any longer, I decided to go to the police. I took the jacket, the cryptic note, and my growing fear with me. I told them everything. The yard sale, the man following me, the message, and the strange events that had been occurring. The police listened, taking my report seriously. They assured me they would investigate the building referenced in the note and would check the property for any leads. I felt some relief, but it was still far from over. The building had been abandoned for years, and there were no recent reports of anything unusual happening there. They promised to look into it, but I had a sinking feeling that they weren't going to find anything. Still, they took the jacket, and I finally felt like I had done everything I could to put an end to the fear. A week later, the man who had been following me never appeared again. It was as though he had vanished, and for a time, I thought I was free. The police had done their part, and I had moved on with my life. But the unease never really left. Every time I walked past the building referenced in the note, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every knock at my door still made my heart race. The mystery of the jacket and its connection to the disappearance never fully resolved, leaving a lingering sense of doubt. I learned one thing. Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. It follows you in the most unexpected ways, and some questions are never meant to be answered.